first speaker, Tony M.
Let me first of all start this timer. Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Tony and I'm a grateful addict. I'm grateful to be here in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm grateful that I'm clean today. I come to meetings because they make sense to me. When I got here, somebody told me to take work to stay here, so I really try to do that to the best of my ability. You know, I was asked to do this meeting, and I sat there all month. I was like, what the hell am I going to talk about? And I don't know why, because really, it's just all about sharing my experience, strength, and hope. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an addict. I was born in addiction. My mother was an addict. My mother's drugs of choice was alcohol, cocaine, pills, mostly anything mood altering. My father was an addict. Heroin, cocaine, alcohol, pills, any mood altering substance almost. You know, and I got it honest. My brothers are addicts. My sister's an addict, you know, but today, 3 of us are clean. I have a sister, I believe she just celebrated 17 years. I have a brother who is well into his 15th year. And then I have a brother who struggles. Just got out of Hooper the other day. You know, and I sit back and I think about my journey. I've always used. The first time I smoked weed, I was 6. The first time I smoked some weed, I was 9. By the time I got to middle school, I was pretty much smoking weed. High school, I smoked weed and I drank. And then I graduated high school, got my GED. And then that's where it just started to take off. Matter of fact, let me go back. The first time I smoked cocaine, I was 16 years old. It was 1984. And by the time I was 18, I was smoking like nobody's business. I lived on 17th in Alberta here in Portland. And it was during the 80s, so it was the crack epidemic at its finest. I got high with my mother. My mother, so-called, was selling dope. I never forget it. Me, her, and 2 other people, we smoked up her whole sack. And by the time I was 18, I was a full-blown crack addict. But one day, August 1st, 1986, we were smoking, and a lady got up and answered the door. We were all in the house, and the lady got up and answered the door. And she turned around, and she fell on me, burnt me with a cigarette, and went into an OD and almost died in front of me. And I never forget, I looked at my cocaine, I looked at my partner, I was like, here you go. But I wasn't done. I stopped smoking out of the pipe. But just like the literature says, I just shifted it. I started putting it in weed. And then I did that until that became too much. And then I was snorted. And I did that pretty much most of my adult life. And I also drank too. alcohol, if I had to say was my main drug of choice, it was probably drinking more than anything else. Everything else stemmed from the drinking. And it got bad. And it's so funny because today I see them patterns. I can see it so clearly where I was an addict then, and I would just tell myself I wasn't, and all, like it says, all the evidence showed that I was. I mean, and I did that through my 20s. And I remember in 1994, I was introduced to crank. And the funniest thing about it, and this may sound crazy, by a black girl. Because back in the day, I'm just telling my truth. Because back in the day, when we seen crank, we looked at that like that's a white dude drug. Black people don't do crank. But it was a black girl who turned me on to it. And I remember I was blowing cocaine, I was snorting cocaine, and she was like, try this. And I was like, I'm an addict, so I'm like, all right, I'll try because I've heard about it. And I will never forget that first time I took that line, I grabbed the side of my head. I thought my head was going to explode. And I said, what the fuck did you just, excuse me, oh God. I said, what the heck did you just give me? But guess what? I'm an addict. I did it again. And again. And again. So, and I would do this periodically. And I would only do it really with her. I'd get around her, I'd do it. And if I wasn't around her, I'd do other drugs, drink. But like I said, drinking was my thing. Everything else stemmed from the drinking. I got 2 DUIs. I've lost a marriage. I've was just doing the most. Just doing just so much. And so my marriage ends, and when my marriage ended, I basically was so distraught from that. It was almost like I took my life and it was a funnel, and I took a ball and I just let that ball go. And the spiral just began. And that was in 2006. And then in 2008, I was in a relationship with somebody else. And somebody said something to me one day that was very profound. She asked me a question. She said, Tony, can I ask you a question? And I'm sitting on the couch drinking, and she said, aren't you tired of losing good women? And it kind of blew me back because I had to sit back and think about it, and I just reflected on it, and I was like, yeah. And she said, you don't think your drinking plays a part in that? So that next week, I got up and went to my first AA meeting. And a week later, I got my second DUI. And I went to DUI, and I never forget, because this is when my journey with recovery really began. I was up against my second one. They gave me an expedited plea. They basically said, if you do 25 hours of community service and you do your victims panel, start your classes, we'll give you a plea. And I'll never forget, and it was September 24th of 2012. I was about to start my DUI classes, and I had been going to AA meetings. And I told myself, I'm going to do the things that they asked me. And I know where I'm at, you guys. I know what room I'm sitting in. And I said, I'm going to do the things that they asked me. And it's funny because I haven't had a drink since 2012. I haven't had a drink since September 25th of 2012 because of the rooms at AA. But I never closed the door on my using. Because guess what? I really didn't think I was an addict. I just basically said, I'm just somebody who get high. And the reason I was able to do that was because back in 1994, when my future wife had left me at the time and took my kids, she said to me, no, not 94, take that back, 2000. She looked at me and she said, either you're going to stop blowing cocaine or I'm going to take these boys and I'm going to leave. And that was my first experience going to an NA meeting at Miracles. And at the time when I went to the meeting, it was wild and it was rough. And I never forget, I looked at them and I said, y'all make me want to get high. I said, I don't need you guys. And guess what? I never did cocaine again. But once again, as the literature talks about, I just shifted it to a different drug. So mind you, now we get to 2012 and I quit drinking. But I never closed the door on using. So I end up moving to Seattle. And I'm coming back and forth from Portland. One day I'm in Mount Olivet Church. And I see the girl that I talked about earlier. I see her daughter. And I asked her daughter the question. Hindsight, I wish I never would have asked her. I said, where's your mama? She told me where mama was at. I went and seen her, and the first thing she opened the door, she said, where the you been? You just gonna leave without saying nothing to me, blah, 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 blah. And that started a journey. It got ugly. So mind you, I'm doing subcontract work. So I'm out of town. I'm a welder fitter at the time. So I'm coming back and forth to Portland, and I'm getting high, and I'm using meth. And I never forget, it's like 2015, 16, as I'm driving up and down the freeway, I'm like, this is becoming a problem. But guess what? Like the literature says, we live to use, we use to live. And I was just out of control. And that went on for about 4 years. Finally, in 2020, one day I'm working in Bremerton, Washington, and I'm coming out the shower of a Motel 6, and I look myself in the mirror. I'm skin and balls. Mind you, I'll tell you, I'm standing here right now, 260, 270, probably 280, but I was probably about $150. And I stood in that mirror, and it scared the shit out of me. Now, mind you, I told you earlier I had a brother in the rooms. So I sat down and I got on the phone. And I said, probably the greatest sentence I ever could say. He answered the phone. He said, what's up, Tony? And I said, hi, my name is Tony and I'm an addict. And I'm powerless over my addiction and my life is unmanageable. And he said, what? And I laughed and I said it again. And he said, what you talking about? Because mind you, really quick, meth did something to me that it doesn't do to a lot of people. It calmed me down. It was like Ritalin to me. I didn't even understand that. So it did the reverse to me. It would have me like this. I'd be chill on one. Right. And I didn't even find that out, but that's later on. I didn't even find that out until a girl said that to me. But anyway, so I said that to my brother, and he said to me, what's going on? I told him about how I've been using whoop-de-whoop-whoop, because he didn't even really realize it, even though all the signs were there, because, the literature it told me this. And so I came home, I went to treatment, got a sponsor, and I started working steps. And I remember I was in treatment. I got clean during COVID. I got clean on that screen. And the coldest thing about it, me going to treatment during COVID was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because for the first time in my life, I got to sit down and just go and really figure out what the hell is going on with me. So now, I'm in treatment. And I'll never forget, the first week was a blur because I just got out of Hooper, but it was the second week. We're in a Sunday meeting in the house, and we read out the book. And the chapter we read was Recovery and Relapse. And I'm sitting there with my head down, and we're reading and I'm listening, And as it's being read, my head just starts rising up. Because I'm listening to what's going on. I'm listening to the words. And it's telling my story. And I never forget. We didn't even get through the chapter. I slapped the table. I said, I'll share. Because right then and there, it made sense to me. Because it talked about, I stopped, because that's what I did. I stopped going, even though it was the Liquid Anonymous. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped working with my sponsor. I stopped doing all the things that had me cool and had me good. And I fell right back into being me. So I got a sponsor, the same sponsor I still have today. And I started doing step work. And that's where the awakening started happening. You know, step one, because there's a principle attached to these steps. You know, and step one, the principle is honesty. I had to get honest. Because just like it says, you know, and it's funny, and I just want to read this really quick, because this describes me wholeheartedly when we talk about why we're here. And I'm going to use this in the I form. Why we're here. Before coming to the fellowship of NA, I could not manage my own life. I could not live and enjoy life as other people do. I had to have something different, and I thought I found it in drugs. I placed the use ahead of the welfare of my family, my friends, my kids. I had to have drugs at all costs. I did many people great harm, but most of all, I harmed myself. Through my inability to accept personal responsibility, I was creating my own problems. I seemed to be incapable of facing life on its own terms. Most of us realize that in my most of us realize that in my addiction, I was slowly committing suicide. But addiction is such a cunning enemy of life, I lost the power to do anything about it. Many of us ended up in jail, sought help through medicine, religion, and psychiatry. None of these methods were sufficient for me. My disease always resurfaced until it continued until in desperation, I sought help from each other in Narcotics Anonymous. After coming to NA, I realized that I was sick. I suffered from a disease which is no known cure. It can, however, be arrested, and at some point, recovery is possible. And once I read that and I figured that out and I started working steps, and like I say, that first step, I had to get honest with myself because I really didn't even understand what my disease was. I thought my problem was drugs, but shit, my problem was addiction. You know, when we talk about the unmanageability piece and we talk about the compulsion and the obsession and the spiritual void and just the biggest of all, the denial. If you hear my story, I talk about denial through the whole thing. I never would admit that I was an addict, but all the evidence told me that I was early. But after that, and I did that, what it did do, it gave me hope that I could start to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I got it here. I'm with you, but give me the single too. It gave me hope. And that's the principle for that. And understanding insanity, because my life was insane. Insane. Do you know I would do shit that just made no absolute sense? None. I made sense out of nonsense on a daily basis. But then, once I understood that this is a daily process of insanity, because every day that I'm clean is me safer, getting closer to my sanity. I'm more sane today than I've ever been in my life. Then once I worked that step, it was easy for me. After I got honest and I got that hope, it was easy for me to take action and make that decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God is my understanding. And, you know, and understanding what a decision is. Because a decision is after careful consideration coming to a conclusion. And I came to a conclusion through working the first two steps that I need to turn my will and my life over. And that's where my change began to happen. That's where I started to get some hope from the step 2 and 3. So now, when I did that, because steps 1, 2, and 3 gave me that foundation of what I needed. It gave me a ground off. It gave me something to work off of. Because now this change is starting to happen. I'm different. I'm different. I'm moving different. My talk is different. The way that I think is different, which was huge. Because I live by a code. Who I am is who I be until I die. Accept it and don't mess with it. But if you with me, you stuck with me. And I live by that. You know, my thing, I had an attitude of, I didn't care if you didn't want to talk to me because you're just one less person I had to talk to. I'd walk up, okay. But as I built my foundation, it gave me the courage to do a 4-step. So now I'm going to start to talk about the things that we may not talk about. Our fears, our resentments, you know, sex things if they come up. Those things that we put in the back of our mind, I got you. Those things we put in the back of our mind that we don't talk about in the deepness, you know, of our insanity. But I also got to figure out that I had assets and liabilities too. But now, once I did that, it gave me the integrity in the 5th step to admit to myself, to God, to myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. But I had to really understand and see, because people just think 4 and 5 is talking, but it is just writing and talking. But you got to look at the exact nature of our wrongs, because it's not what I did. The exact nature of my wrong is why did I do it? That's where a lot of people, for me, I kind of missed the point. I thought I was just writing a 4th step and then just talking. No, it's a little bit more than that. But then I started getting to the hard part. Whew. I started getting to the 6th step. And that was a doozy for me. That was a doozy, because now I got to have a willingness to look at these character defects. You know, because now I'm writing them down. I remember I wrote out all my character defects. I came up to like 91. And I'm like, shit. Now, as I'm looking at these character defects, they bringing on more character defects. But I had the willingness right now, because remember, I've already built this foundation in these first 3 steps. So now I'm moving on. So now as I'm writing them out, and what I found out, a lot of them, they fell off. But a lot of them, they're still there. So now as I get to step 7, I have to have this humility to just be humble enough to ask God to remove them. And will he really remove them? But I got to be mindful of them. But once again, as my foundation was built, this light is killing me. My foundation was built. No, I'm good. As this foundation was built, I'm taking a deeper level, because basically, to me, step 7 is the cousin of step 3, the older cousin. Because I've already made this decision to turn my will in my life now, but now I'm going to take a greater thing and ask him to humbly remove them. And that's when really something happened. I remember one time, I have a support group. And I remember one time we were just talking step 7, and I swear to God, you guys, something happened. And we read this paragraph right here, and I knew something was different. And I think, to me, this is one of the greatest paragraphs. It's the last paragraph, and it works how and why, step 7. We're being changed. We're not only heard about the miracle of recovery, we're becoming living, breathing examples of the power of NA and program can do. The spiritual life has ceased to be a theory we hear about in meetings. It's now a tangible reality. We see a miracle by simply looking in the mirror. The God of our understanding has taken us from spiritually unconscious, hopeless addicts to spiritually aware recovering addicts eager to live. Although we've reached this point, the damage we cause and our shortcomings need to be addressed. Desire continued recovery and freedom, we go on to step 8 and begin to make the amends because that we caused. So now I got to get this brotherly love thing. Because really I've worked a lot on myself. Because to me, the first 7 steps, we're working on me. So now, I got to start making these amends outward. And all I'm doing is just making a list. I'm not jumping ahead. I'm not jumping ahead writing, saying anything to anybody. I'm just making a list. But as I moved on to step 9, I had to have discipline to make sure that I was going to be making the right amends for the right reason. And that's why, for me, the importance of my sponsor, because I got to bounce those things off of them. You know what I'm saying? So now, as I'm doing these amends, some I get to do now, some I get to do whenever I see them, and some I may not get to make. And that's okay. Because now I have the willingness and the humility to make them if I do see them, if I get to see them, or however that looks like. Some may not be around to be able to do that. So as I move on and I get to step 10 and have the perseverance, which is the spiritual principle for that, and continue, to do a daily inventory. And it's funny, I was, when I looked at a daily inventory, and if I'm wrong, promptly admit it, I just looked at that like for what it was. But really what I really got to really see what that meant is when I worked step 6. Because now I got to see, now at the end of the day, I get to go do my actions and my motives match. You know what I'm saying? And if I'm wrong, I will. I admit it. But I ain't wrong that much, so. But if I am wrong, I will admit it. But now, what's funny though? Because working these steps, when we get to the spiritual principle of 11, that spiritual awakenings, through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with the God of our understanding. It's funny because the growth, I can meditate today, you guys. I've tried since I've been clean to meditate, and I've sat there and I cannot close my mind. But the other day I was at a meeting and it was a meditation Monday, and I just box breathed and closed my eyes, and the next thing I know, ding, that little bell went off. And I was so proud of myself. I said, oh shit, something's happening. I said, oh my God, I'm able to meditate. Oh, what a beautiful thing. That's the beauty of this program. It really is. And of course, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs. And then we talk about service. I see Carmen sitting here. I'm on the PACNA committee. I'm serving that service there. I'm a GSR in area, a secretary of a few meetings. I'm a treasurer for a meeting. I'm a sponsor. Can't get them to do no I can't get them to do no work though. But they call me with their shit all the time. I say, we gonna answer. I said, excuse me. Sorry, y'all. sorry. But the God of my understanding, he's saying, go tell your story. He's saying, tell your story. And it's funny because I say, you want to answer some bullets? We'll get to it. And I just say, okay. Because it's funny because I do want to sponsor. If I was really to live in my truth, I do want to sponsor to answer some bullets. Because it'll give me a chance to reflect on where I've been. Because then I'll get to go back and look at what I wrote then versus to where I'm at today. So I see that my time is coming up. Before I go, can I get everybody in the room to lean this way? Can I get everybody in the room to lean this way? Well, you can't say I didn't move you. So, thank you for letting me share.